Okay, so it's 2000, yeah, and in the summer of 2000, I moved to temporarily to the East Coast to be part of something called the Human Rights Campaign Youth College. Sometimes it's also called Campaign College, but it's basically an opportunity for a large LGBT organization to take 100 or so young people and organizers and train them in LGBT political advocacy, and then send them out to act as HRC representatives on campaigns. So I was part of a award-winning team. I think our team won the mock election kind of cycle that we ran, of course. Good teammates, good teammates. I mean, they're some of the best people. I mean, they're really. Most of them are all really high up. I think one's elected, but I was with a really great group of folks, young people who were really on fire for change, and we were part of a young people's cohort that confronted Elizabeth Burch actually about trans and non-binary people. I was like, I don't know, but I'm here for it, inclusion. And heard from her about like what they're trying to do, how far it had been. She was very like, listen, I'm a woman. I was like, they don't like women. I was learning all this stuff. I was like, I didn't know the gays didn't like women. I thought they would let us. But I'm learning about power, right? And so being able to go out there was a very interesting experience, but it also was super random and isolating and like its own like kind of episodes of living in Long Island. I was in this area called Middle Island and Suffolk County, which is kind of in the middle of Long Island. It's not close to the city of New York too much, and it's not super close to the Hamptons. Or it's got really good people though, and the people who took care of me were like super awesome and like love you guys forever. And there were people who basically, jumped up and said, "Hey, we're really strong Democrats. We want to support, and we'll take an LGBT, young person advocate and let them crash on our couch." And so that's kind of what we did was go stay at people's houses that were HRC donors and supporters. And so I ended up in Long Island, and I was like 19, but because it's Long Island and the mob runs and stuff, they were like, "Hey, get a fake ID." So I was like, okay, you're my job telling me to do this, but I'll do it because, okay, fine. I'm not saying the mob rub, it's everything. It's just it feels mobby, if that makes sense. It's very like, I'm not going to say that, oh, it's like Sopranos. It's more of like literally like a guy with a cigar is like, here's some cash to get yourself something nice. You know what I mean? That was like that for me, at least in 2000, right? So, I got myself something nice, and, started hanging out with these kids who were in charge of, you know, canvassing, basically. Canvassers are it's a whole kind of thing that we don't do as much anymore. And we have a lot of people who kind of say they're doing it and doing outreach, but that used to be a lot of political organizing was GOTV, get out the vote, right? And how do we get people to engage with us? And you used to have like paper that would identify people from your polls, and you didn't use a lot of computers or a lot of internet. And I kind of started helping people like I was like, there's a website called MapQuest. It was like, you help, I don't know, use this. And it was a lot easier because everybody was using like Thomas guides and big books that had maps in them, to try to figure out how to make the, quickest route to, a whole bunch of people. And so it was like, well, we're not thinking about elevation. We're not thinking all this kind of stuff. And honestly, we're kind of still not. But, being in Long Island, it was a bit of a smaller group, a smaller area. And so it was like, I don't know, it was like Goonies-esque, if that makes sense. Like there was a party every night almost. It was like every night when we end up work, we'd go to somebody else's house to party. Somebody would drop LSD, not me, somebody else. Not usually my compatriots either from that, the workplace, but just somebody they knew. Um, and it was like this kind of weird, like, let's paint the walls green kind of place, and then we'd fall asleep and go to work and get some Taco Bell, for breakfast. And I don't know, maybe everybody else grew up like that in the 20s, but when they were 20 years old. But for me, it was a really different lifestyle from California, where things were a bit more structured, wasn't so loosey-goosey. Everybody's parents knew where they were all the time, kind of. And in the small town of these towns of Long Island, it was a little bit, So the coolest person I met out there randomly was Eric Mabius, who I just recently saw as I'm watching the Resident Evil movies over 1 to 7, because what don't I do? And he is so cool. And when I saw him in Long Island, he was wearing leather pants in like 80-degree weather, and it was just so cool, even in leather pants in 80-degree weather. And I was like, so I guess he had a party one time, and he was supposed to have Natalie Portman come, and I got so obsessed that I guess some people told Natalie Portman that I was obsessed, and she was like actually worried she shouldn't go to this party in Long Island in like 2000 because I was there, which is not the first time that's happened with another celebrity. So I've learned over time that like my consistent, persistent questioning of things or content leaves a mark, if you will, a memory with other people that might not be positive. So I really do feel bad about possibly making Natalie Portman feel worried, because I wasn't like, oh, I love you so much. I was just really excited about like, you're in the professional. What's your, plans for the future, and like, how are you going to balance school? And questions again. No right to ask. No right to ask. Really, who cares? Like, she lived her life, right? She's still living her life. Really happy for her. But it was one of those things where I was really impressed by, and I have been many times over traveling in the United States, by the kind of simpleness and the repeatability of life. I mean, it all went to crap, of course, when our primary failed, and it turned out the canvassers had been completely making up all the information, totally not the right data, and we lost a lot. And I got moved to another campaign, and another story for that for a different time. But it was very, it was one of those things I think about, and I would go back to Suffolk County, and to Islip and Central Islip and all these areas, and I highly recommend you do too if you ever get a chance to visit New York and get to see more of New York, upstate New York, Long Island, and the city is great, and the city has a whole bunch to offer too, but almost every state in our country has something special, or has special people with really good food. And my very favorite part of that area of Long Island is how much they play Billy Joel. It's like every day, every hour. It's consistent. It's dependable. I'm not saying I moved there just for that, but I want to put it out there that consistent Billy Joel it'll make anything better. Obviously, there's a show called The Boys, which is used to great effect. But I was gonna say, you wouldn't think such a naughty show would use Billy Joel so frequently. But balance, man.